It's been over 500 years since the human race almost went extinct at the hands of the fearsome and mysterious creatures called beasts. The surviving races now make their homes, towns, and cities up on floating islands in the sky to keep out of reach of all but the most mobile of beasts. Only a group of young girls from the leprechaun race can wield the ancient dug weapons needed to fend off invasions from those dangerous creatures. Into these people's unstable and fleeting lives, where a simple call to certain death could come at any moment, enters an unlikely character who is our main protagonist of this story, called Willem Kemet, a mysterious man who lost everything in his final battle over 500 years ago and had awakened from a long, icy slumber. Unable to fight any longer, Willem becomes the father those kids never had, caring for and nurturing them even as he struggles to come to terms with his new life, in which he feels the pain of helplessly waiting for his loved ones to return home from the battle that his daughter once felt for him so long ago. Together, Willem and the leprechauns gradually come to understand what family means and what is truly worth protecting in their lives. In a flash forward, a young red-haired girl, called Kethalie, describes her love for a man before jumping off an airship to her death. In the present day, within a town inhabited by beastmen, Kethalie, now with blue hair, runs through a marketplace chasing after a cat that has stolen her pendant. She slips off a bridge, but is caught and saved by a man who also recovers her pendant. To avoid hostility from the beastmen, Kethalie spends the day with Willem before being escorted away by mysterious guards led by a lizard man. Later, Willem ventures to a pub where he is given military work to be the caretaker of an armory on a floating island, which he reluctantly accepts. Arriving late at night, Willem is confused to find that the island, rather than holding weapons, is instead the home to several young girls, including Kethalie, who is noticeably older than most of them, and whose maid is a troll acquaintance of his called Niglatho. Willem has little experience with kids, so he decides to stay on the job despite previous hires having quit after just one day. Just as he is getting ready for bed, Kethalie reveals that the reason the armory doesn't hold weapons is because the girls are the weapons. We then discover in a flashback, 526 years earlier, a teenage Willem is tended to by a young girl who refers to him as her father just before a grand battle. It is then revealed that Willem never returned home, and within a year humanity became extinct. Willem introduces himself to all the girls, but they cower from him due to never having spent time around men. He eventually befriends two of the ones Kethalie's age, called Ithia, and Nefren manages to win the rest over by cooking for them. Ithia teases Kethalie for having feelings for Willem. While watching the girls play dodgeball, one falls off a small cliff and badly injures her head, only for everyone but Willem to act indifferently. Unnerved, Willem has a reluctant Niglatho tell him who the girls actually are. 5 centuries earlier, humanity created 17 beasts that proceeded to exterminate humanity, leading their fantastical descendants to become the dominant species. Niglatho explains that the girls are leprechauns, who have replicated human behavior, and thus are the only creatures who are able to wield dug weapons. The only weapons able to kill the 17 beasts. However, their bodies are subsequently built to be expendable, and thus they have no fear of death. Ithia and Kethalie soon leave for several days to fight one of the beasts, but return safely, picking them up and encountering the lizard man again. Willem tells Ithia that he intends to stay with the girls because they remind him of someone he knew in a similar situation. While tending to Kethalie, she warns Willem that in 5 days' time, the beasts intend to launch a giant ball of energy which can only be destroyed by a suicidal charge from the girls, with her being the one to do so this time. As a final request, she has him kiss her goodnight. Kethalie goes back to sleep, as Willem remembers that someone, a red-haired girl named Lilia. Willem and Nefren pull an all-nighter in archives looking for a way for Kethalie to avoid death. Upon discovering them in the morning, Kethalie rebukes them for trying to alter her fate, so Willem takes Kethalie outside for a sparring duel. With both wielding dug weapons, Willem handily defeats Kethalie, explaining that the leprechauns' unrefined fighting technique and their lack of knowledge about the dug weapons is what prevents them from greater success. This angers Kethalie, as it would mean their sacrifices were for naught, only for Willem to suddenly collapse from internal bleeding. Niglatho manages to stabilize him. Later at night, she explains to the girls that she found Willem's petrified state frozen in ice years earlier, and managed to thaw and cure him. With Willem using a universal translator, they were able to discover that Willem is the world's last human, now known as Mnetwits and ridiculed by all other hypersentient species. Despite this, all the girls react to him with curiosity except Kethalie, who in her distress flies away and meets with the lizard man, revealed to be named Limeskin. He reassures her that Willem is simply trying to push against her nature, but advises her to act as she desires. Kethalie returns to the island, where she discovers Willem performing maintenance on her sword. and he explains that dug weapons are made from people's wishes. She decides to accept Willem's offer of properly teaching her. At her request, she also asks for Willem to make her buttercake should she return safely, unaware that Willem had been promised to have the exact same thing by the girl who saw him off before he left to fight the beasts. Kethali, Ithia, and Nephrin then leave to go fight the beasts. Over 2 weeks after Kethali's group left, Willem continues to watch over the girls, but begins experiencing nightmares that the trio have all died on their mission. Eventually, one of the girls, called Tiet, has a special dream of her talking to someone unfamiliar. This dream, called a harbinger dream, requires a checkup immediately afterwards. To do this, Willem and Tiet travel to Corne de Luz, an island where human-like creatures and beastmen live in harmony, for Tiet to get checked at a hospital. As the island was the filming location for several romance films, of which Tiet is a fan, Willem and her go on a minor sightseeing tour of various film locales. After concluding their tour at a famous statue of the city's founder, they witness beastmen attacking the shop of another beastman for an unknown reason. However, Willem covertly intervenes, allowing the former to be arrested. While Tiet gets her checkup, Willem talks to the head doctor, who tells him that the harbinger dream is said to be an indicator that a leprechaun has reached the age of maturity and can fight in combat. Tiet, like other girls, must receive the checkup to determine how to best prepare their body accordingly. Willem is privately distraught at Tiet being sent into battle at such a young age. Later, while spending the night at a military compound, Willem wakes up early and goes for a walk. He runs into a dog beast woman, who reveals she is concealing a weapon and requests Willem deliver a message to Limeskin. Before he can confirm, they receive word from other officers that the battle has failed. Willem collapses in despair, only for Limeskin and all 3 girls to walk into the compound perfectly fine. Overwhelmed, Willem uses magic to run to Kethali and hug her, much to everyone's surprise, only for her to slap him in return. 18 hours earlier, Kethali, Ithia, and Nephrin fight against the beast, but when it takes on a new form, Limeskin orders a strategic retreat, forcing the island in question to be abandoned. Kethali attempts to disobey this and keep fighting, but she suddenly experiences a vision of a young girl speaking cryptic, haunting words that briefly turns her eyes red. In the present, while they update Willem on the events, Kethali blames herself for not going through with the suicidal attack, but Nephrin consoles her. They are interrupted by the dog beast woman Willem encountered, revealed to be Limeskin's friend's daughter Fyra. She gives Limeskin evidence of death threats against her father, Corne de Luz's mayor, due to his support of racial integration, by a group of supremacists known as the Annihilation Knights. She asks for military support at an upcoming rally, but everyone in the room, though sympathetic, declines due to military policy forbidding them from interfering in local affairs, and also to avoid escalating the conflict. Despite their rejection, Fyra still accompanies Willem and the leprechauns as they retrieve Tiet, then proceeds to treat them to lunch and take them on the sightseeing tour Willem earlier promised Tiet. During the tour, Kethali continues to have the visions she experienced during the battle, but decides not to tell the rest. Later, Willem notices the Annihilation Knights are following them with the intent of kidnapping Fyra. He and the girls lure them into an alley, where he proceeds to handily defeat them by using magic to lethally flip coins at him, then has them arrested. Though grateful for defeating them, Fyra chastises him for using her as bait, then departs. As evening approaches, Kethali pulls Willem to the side and makes him admit that he wanted a fight out of an innate suicidal desire. Willem then further admits that though longing for death with the absence of the people he left behind, he has found a potential new family in the girls, explaining his earlier reaction and hug. Hearing this, Kethali realizes she is in love with him. Just as they are about to leave, Willem is approached by an officer who tells him that someone called Sawang would like to meet with him. Recognizing that name, Willem sends the girls home without joining them. Kethali and the other fairies return to the warehouse, while Willem went to meet his old friend, the great sage, Sawang, who fought alongside him in his old life, and is still alive for centuries by a self-inflicted curse. The two of them reminisce about the past. Sawang is happy to see Willem and tells him about a plan to retake the surface from the 17 beasts. Willem's ability to repair the dug weapons is key to Sawang's strategy, but he refuses to help with a plan that would send more fairies into battle. Back at the warehouse, Kethali suffers a mental breakdown from using her powers too much. While lying unconscious in her bed, she has a vision that could be the first step in a tragic series of events. Two fairy soldiers, Noft and Rantalk, are on a mission to escort a group of salvagers to the surface. There, they met one of Willem's friends, called Grick, pondering about the beasts that are related to their own reasons for being. Rantalk begins questioning them to Grick. Willem was summoned to the military base on Island 49 regarding the situation with the salvagers on the surface. Much to Willem's displeasure, he was ordered to send one ferry soldier from the warehouse to the surface. Kethali wasn't sure if she can keep her individuality. Ithia came to her and revealed that Kethali wasn't the only one that had problems with memories from her previous life. Ithia began telling a story about a certain girl whose individuality was eroded by her past life's memory. Willem met with Rantalk and Noft, and immediately provided maintenance for the poison in their body. Even so, Rantalk still cannot trust the sole survivor of the Imnetwit who was wiped out by the 17 beasts, still being a bit awkward due to the proposal from the previous day. Willem and Chtoli met up with Grick to check up on the ruins of Willem's birthplace, Gomag City. All of a sudden, a huge earthquake happened and a swarm of Timer appeared. Nefrin, Rantalk, and Noft fought back against the swarm of Timer, but their overwhelming numbers gradually pushed the fairies into a corner. Willem enters the fray and fought the Timer with his wounded body. In her last moment, Kethali asked one last request to Elk, which was for Elk to return to her body, since Elk took her out so she could keep what remains of herself. At first, Elk says no. However, with the mention of the promise she made to Willem and Elk during their childhood, she gets convinced. This leads to Kethali saving Ren and Willem as they plummet to the ground, and her killing all the beasts which would threaten their lives. However, in the process, she opens the fairy gate and wipes out everything, which resulted in Kethali and Ren being dead, and Willem being the only survivor. And this brings the anime to an end. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss out on another video. Until next time, take care.